What time is it?
It's time for more love.
Good evening and welcome to More Love. My name is Atia and I'm here with my wonderful husband and co-host Ingram, and we are joined by four fantastic guests. You don't want to go anywhere. We have an awesome discussion for you this evening. We're going to be talking about dark skin and light skin and good hair versus bad hair. Now, I know there are many listeners out there who's probably asking the question or thinking, why is it in 2015 are we still having this discussion? You know what? I agree with you, but it's happening. And so joining us, we have four professionals who's going to give their take and then again leave us with some takeaways on how we can move forward. So without any further delay in this conversation, I want to start with our first guest, MALIK AZIZ. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on your show on this very important topic, relationship to our community. I am co-founder of the Dow 423, which is a organization that was founded on the ground in Sudan in 2007 to deal with fact-finding missions as it relates to crisis or hot spots on the African continent. We are peacemakers. We are conflict resolutionists and also political analysts. Also, I am the founder of the MuslimStreet.com, and the Muslim Street is a portal for the various Muslim ethnicities to come together and different political and cross-cultural ideas as it relates to Muslim issues in the world. Those are our two top projects.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Hello, everyone. My name is TIMNA, and what I do is I'm a relationship advocate. So I work with men that are assholes in their relationships, but they're great at business, but they just need to make a balance in their life. I also have a blog talk radio show on Taylor Kennedy Media, which I do on Sunday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, and I also do a talk show on Tuesday nights, Grown Folk Talk. That's what I do, and you can connect with me on TIMNA.com, and I do everything funny, crazy, but a little bit over the hedge. That's why my show is called TIMNA Uncut.
Thank you, Tim. You know, it's really interesting because I really want you to kind of briefly tell our listeners before we continue on with the introductions, because you have a unique domestic situation which would really, really give credence to why it's important for you to be on this particular show.
Oh, okay. So I've been married 19 years. I am as I would say, a Black Caribbean Latino, very multi-local. That's a new word to use. And my husband is from Switzerland. So as I said, we've been married 19 years and lived in Germany for about 8 years. And we have two girls, 7 and 9, that are intermixed. And we love our family. We're non-traditional. We keep it real. We live life for real. And we travel all the time. And we explore. We make sure the kids are very much exposed into different cultures and different societies, class systems, everything. Even within the community that we live in, it's very hosh-posh with the rich and the poor. So we really try to embrace ourselves totally multicultural, multiracial, multi-everything, multi-economical, just to make sure we have a balance within our world.
Fantastic. And then our next guest is CORTEZ Charles. Please tell our listener, CORTEZ, about who you are and what you do.
Sure, great. My name is CORTEZ Charles. I'm a financial analyst at a national financial firm here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a former air traffic controller, former pilot. I like to tout that because those are very non-traditional roles, and I actually jobs that I enjoyed doing for almost 20 years. I'm a father of two. My daughter has just now penetrated the doors of her first community college and is doing quite well.
And then our final guest is Dr. CLACK. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me as a part of your show as well. My name is Dr. Angela CLACK, and I'm in South Jersey, and I have a private practice. So my career is as a psychologist, and I do work with adults and youth and their families. I do a lot of couples work, but I really have a heart and passion for women's issues. And certainly the topic today is one of those. I am also a women's personal and professional life coach, so that's my second hat that I wear, to also help women to work through some of these very sensitive issues so they can be very productive in relationships and business as well. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. We would like to thank all of our wonderful guests who are here. And I'm going to turn to Ingram because I think that you're dark chocolate, and I love the fact that you're dark chocolate, but I think that you should go ahead and get the show started.
Okay.
This was certainly a topic that he was like squinching at, and it's like, we got to do it because a lot of people are talking about it, and it has really gotten a lot of attention lately here.
Yes, with an introduction like that, I think we crack on. Let's start with Malik. Malik, when we talk about dark skin versus light skin, what goes through your mind? What is something that comes to your mind?
Yeah, great question. I think, and a good way to start. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just race relations vis-a-vis white supremacy and who is the dominant player on the planet and who has been for centuries over, and that's here in this country in America. When I stepped out of my door at 4.5 years old on the way to kindergarten, I was confronted in an all-black community with all-black teachers, a black mayor. I like to say everybody from the mayor all the way down to the wine head was black in our community, but I was confronted by anti-black self-hatred and anti-black racism perpetrated on me by my own people because I, too, like Ingram, I'm double chocolate. I'm mocha. I'm my mom, and blessed be my mother, who it was 6 of us, and I was the not only the run of the litter, but the darkest of the litter. She prepared me to step out that door at 4.5 by showering me with love, affection, and doted over me out of the other 5 kids. And the reason is this is in nature where you have a lioness who gets her cubs ready to compete in nature. Well, she understood that black self-hatred would be waiting for me when I left out the door. The larger question when I became of adolescent and was able to integrate with the greater society in high school and in college and in professional life, the necessary tools that she gave me with this self-esteem and this confidence in my blackness. As she used to say, Allah reached down and kissed you with the sun when you were born. So this type of love, this type of confidence that she built into me helped me navigate my way, not only through the self-hatred of blackness and Africanness that exists in the black community, not only then but today, but also in the larger society of white supremacy.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Wow. Cortez, listening to Malik talk and share his experience in terms of how his mother prepared him to meet the world being a double chocolate black man, what was your take? Because you're a fairly light-skinned man. What's your take? How were you prepared for the world?
Well, interesting enough, I received quite a bit of that inter-racism within the spectrum of my community as well. And growing up as a child that was considered light, there were times where my peers as children would refer to me as white boy, believe it or not. I mean, with obviously distinct African features, it was that my skin in racial proportion to others was so light that, that it was almost a caricature of, of who everyone else was in our community. So, I don't think my mother, being a young mother, had the opportunity to even look at that as an issue. I'm much later on, after I joined the military at 17 and went out into the world, and it wasn't until my first exposure how dynamic the issues was concerning race in our community was until Spike Lee's 1988 movie School Days, when there was an obvious disparity and inter-rivalry in our community concerning dark skin and light skin, and how projected the white supremacist notion of the lighter the better, the darker the worse, was infiltrated in our community. And it wasn't until I read the book by C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins and the Haitian Revolution, on how detrimental our rise and our freedom and independence was, until we first dealt with these issues concerning color and class had to be dealt with.
So, Dr. Clack, explain to me, or explain to our listeners, where would that mindset come from? It's given our history, you almost expect other communities to look at us, whether we're light-skinned, whether we're dark-skinned, whether we have fine hair or coarse hair. But what about what Cortez talked about in terms of the issues within our own community?
I think that's an excellent question. I kind of reflect back on my upbringing, because you say, well, where do these messages come from? And very early on, I do think they begin systemically. We go back to slavery. And the messages that get translated generationally, our grandmother's stories, our great-grandmother's stories about their experiences with race and their experiences with being excluded. And I think that most of those messages are being retold, and they're not always being retold in a way that is educating the next generation. So they're not prepared, I believe, the young people I'm working with, they're not prepared for that kind of conversation when they're maybe excluded from a group and they don't understand. So very early on, I know that my mother's in her 80s, so let's say 20s, 30s growing up. My mother was very fair-skinned. She had some Indian ethnicity as well, and she was referred to, and I won't say the whole word, but she was referred to growing up as a white, the N-word. My mother carried that with her for years. My mother's such a beautiful woman, but imagine growing up in that time period, and that's what you were referred to. So those kind of messages then get translated to our next generation of people, and I unfortunately think that we have to do a better job about educating people about the psyche and how our psyche gets impacted by these kind of micro-assault, microaggression conversations and statements.
Timna, being in an interracial relationship, when you hear about light skin versus dark skin, how does that affect you on a personal level first?
I only could talk for me. I'm going to say that I personally wasn't affected by light skin, dark skin, or any of that stuff until we moved from New York to Florida. So as I was growing up, we had the rainbow in our family, and there was no discussion of light or dark or any of that stuff. It was just, we are people, we are family. This is how it is. And so I didn't have that hang up about my complexion, and I'm a brown skinned woman. So I didn't have a hang up about my complexion until I moved to the South. I'm from New York in a Caribbean community, and I moved to Florida. And when I moved to Florida, which was really funny, I started high school, not started, but I was in high school over there, and the guys didn't like me because I was too brown, and they only liked my light-skinned friends, which was odd to me because I didn't have that situation when I was in New York. So there is a very cultural situation. I think from the South to the North, there's a lot of these type of things going on as well, how you were brought up, how things are related in your family. I didn't have an issue until I went to high school. And when I went to high school and I saw this problem going on, I was fighting against it. And I used to tell the guys, I said, you have a slave mentality, and I used to fight against this issue. But then I left the fight, and then I decided to go to all-black college.
You're listening to More Love. Many people, both men and women, sometimes in the quiet of their minds sit and ponder, over why they're having such a hard time finding a life mate. And while the answers to that question may be very complex in some cases and very simple in others, I'm sure that many of us can roll up our sleeves, our pants legs, or our shirts and point to all the war wounds that we have received as a result of opening our hearts to love and romance. Many can share countless stories on how Tyrone or Freddie has hurt them, or how Lucinda is a loon and just damn crazy and no woman is worthy to be trusted. The truth is, countless people hold on to the pain and they struggle to realize that their romance war is over and now it's time to heal from the trauma and begin living life again and experiencing love the way it was meant to be experienced. If you are finding it difficult to move on with your life after a painful love battle, tune in to More Love Radio Show, where we discuss the issues of love and romance in the Black community.
It ain't even real. You wish you had hair like this. Girl, you know you weren't even born with blue eyes. That's right. Blue contact lenses. They're just jealous. Right. Jealous. Rachel, I've been watching you look at Julie. You're not slick. If that was true, he wasn't much to look at. Pickaninny, Barbie doll, high yellow heifer, tar baby, wanna be white, jigaboo. Don't start. We're gonna finish it.
But now that I have kids who are brown, it's so funny. My kids consider themselves brown. I don't give them color. I don't do anything. That's them. And I let them be that way because I think it's important for us to start moving forward with our thought process in regards to talking to children about dark skin, light skin, and differentiating themselves. I want them to have themselves as people. And I realize, and I'll share my caught up with the light skin, dark skin problem from high school. It approached me when I saw my kids, my daughter who was in kindergarten a few years ago, and she had a group of friends who were all light-skinned. And mind you, their family makeup was all completely different. Each and every child, family members were different. But they all assimilated because they all had the same color. And there was one little brown-skinned girl sitting on the corner, and I looked at her and I said, oh, my God, y'all not talking to her. I was volunteering in the class. And then I went over to the teacher and I said, what's up with this? This is a light-skinned mafia? I said, why is this little brown girl why are they not playing with her? And I felt like that little brown girl. So what was so funny, the teacher bust out laughing, and she was like, oh, my gosh, Timna, no, they just, that's how kids are. They assimilate with things that they feel comfortable with. And I thought that was interesting when the teacher told me that. So then I had to sit back and I had to say, okay, I'm not raising my kids with any type of discrimination, but I noticed how she assimilated with the light-skinned kids. So I don't know, maybe we should talk about that a little bit, but I was conflicted in my personal belief system on they're segregating this little girl. But then when I talked to my daughter and I said, well, why don't you play with Michaela? And she said, because Michaela's just mean. Not because of anything else, but she's just mean. And I thought, I stood back and I thought about the color situation, which I was looking at, but they weren't looking at that. So I don't know. At this point, I realized.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I was just watching a documentary a few days ago, and they were asking the young children, they were very young, which is the bad, which is the good girl, or which is the nice one, or which is the mean one, or which is the pretty one, and which is the ugly one. And systematically, all of the children chose the darker one as being the ugly, the bad, the mean, and they chose the lighter one or the white one to be the opposite of that. So I understand what you're saying, and I guess maybe this is where either Malik or maybe someone else or maybe Ingram wants to speak up on, but that has to stem from somewhere. And I know, yes, we talk about slavery, but we're over 400 years removed. How do we attack that mentality?
Well, yeah, this is Malik. I think the work in attacking that mentality is going to have to be done from a subject matter expert perspective, meaning that we have the doctor of psychology on the panel with us. It is in that area where we're going to gain the most ground the fastest. And she was absolutely correct, Atia, that the doctor was absolutely correct that this stems from slavery. Now, we have to deal with that. Read the works of Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Read the works of Dr. Ivor Carruthers. Read the works of Dr. Bobby Wright, who coined the term menticide and set up a mental institution on the west side of Chicago before his death in 1980. And these are subject matter experts, all psychologists, who want to attack this from a position of psychology and how slavery post-traumatically has affected black life.
Excuse me. How can this be slavery for children that just came into this world? And I don't talk about slavery. Let's talk about today, 2015.
Exactly. I'm getting ready to answer your question if you let me. It's the same way that the Dr. Yak said, that just as stories are passed down from generation to generation. Black people in 2015 are still eating slave food. We're still eating chitlins.
But my children have not had that story.
Wait. So we're talking about the larger black problem in this country. We're not talking about your children. If I'm going to talk about my children, then that doesn't tell the whole story. We're talking about the story of race and the issue of black self-hatred and dark skin, light skin as vis-a-vis white supremacy. That's the larger question. It's not about your kid.
I'm talking about not my kids, but today's kids. Today's kids are coming out. I'm talking about who are not the kids who are not even given that information. Okay?
They are given that information. They not only are they given that information, it's retooled over and over and over again in the whole context of white supremacy on every systematic level, in their education, in the television, in the medium that they watch. It's given to them in their popular culture, on and on and on. It's given to them in the whole question of black leadership. We have to ask the question of why, at least since Marcus Garvey in the early 1920s, why have we chose light-skinned black to be our leaders? I mean, these are questions we have to ask ourselves, and it's no accident that these things are happening. So when we elections they Tocqueville, and I'll end on this point, and my point is that we have to turn this crisis, and it is a crisis in black life, over to the subject matter experts, and those are the psychologists, to deal with this issue from a community perspective. All right, Alexis de Tocqueville, who is a French white philosopher and historian and psychologist, comes from France during the 1840s, during slavery in this country. To do what? To study the three races that had dominated the country. One was the American whites, the other was the black slaves, and the other were the Indian tribes, the Native Americans. And he studied them, and he came out with a piece called Democracy in America in 1843. And he concluded that, and this is important to our discussion and understanding how information is passed from generation to generation, just as the foods that we eat. Alexis de Tocqueville said in his classical piece that out of all the three races that he studied, the blacks, not like their Indian counterparts, will go to extremes to imitate their slave masters, though their slave masters shunned them from it.
You know, that's really, really interesting. We want to take a moment to take a break. And when we come back, we're definitely going to pick up on that conversation, that point that Malik and Timna are making. But we want to bring in Dr. Clack after our break. So we'll be right back.
Angela Clack, PSYD-LPC, is a licensed psychotherapist who practices in Sicklerville, New Jersey, and is an author, speaker, trainer, and consultant. She provides psychotherapy to adults, youth, couples, and families. Dr. Clack strives to educate, empower, and strengthen communities of color in reducing the stigma of mental illness. She has developed Women's Empowerment Group International to assist women in rewriting their life. If you would like to contact Dr. Clack, she may be reached at 856-875-5335.
Very interesting discussion between Malik and Timna there. Dr. Clack.
Yes.
From your professional standpoint, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to chime in, but I wanted to let them get it through. It was good. So I I do want to talk. So let's go post-slavery and talk about how is it that the psyche of our young people and our people is still similar to the struggles that were perpetuated through slavery. So we're talking post-slavery. And the gentleman made, and where I was going to go with this, is that self-hatred, whether it's reflected of our skin color or other attributes that ethnicities have, these messages get perpetuated because the generations before are not dealing with their issues. So, for example, a young lady was talking about the young girl who was brown-skinned who was separated from the group. And her daughter said, Mom, no, it was just that she's mean. So we excluded her from the group. But for that young lady, she projected into that situation what maybe was in her, but that she was still dealing with. That's how those messages keep getting perpetuated to our young children, our youth. And then you have the media images. I mean, I think we're getting a little bit better with that, but that still is about teaching kids about privilege. What does privilege look like? A lot of people don't even know what that means. So I work with many women who are still struggling. They're 30 and they're 40. They're still struggling with conversations, labels, and statements from when they were teenagers. If that remains unresolved, so that's still unfinished business for them, that then gets, in some ways, internalized to their youth. So if their kids aren't getting the opposite message about how to accept themselves, accept and embrace their ethnicities, that's how that message about self-hatred and not liking yourself or who defines you gets perpetuated generationally.
Dr. Clack, I want to really follow up on what you're saying, and I really want to target the media here, because I feel that they are as responsible as anybody, the media and the educational maybe pamphlets or booklets that are going into schools, and from an early age, young people are being educated one way or the other about the color of their skin by watching the television, or having to watch stuff about maybe stuff in their books where they're seeing dark-skinned people being slaves and maybe white people looking like gods and kings and queens, and less of that kind of like being reflective of dark people being kings and queens and being great. Surely that's going to have some influence or some way of thinking to affect the young people, even the older generations.
Can you clarify a little bit more what your question or what your thought is?
Okay, let me change it another way. The media and how it's perceived, and how maybe one race or one color is better than another by the different tones, different shades of black made more in the media, especially maybe in the UK, for example, where we have a lot more lighter skinned blacks being portrayed as very positive, and all the darker skinned being very portrayed as bad criminals and all the rest of it. How that affects the psyche of young people.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I don't even want to get started on the media because we still are showing...
We've got to go there.
Because we're still showing and perpetuating slavery even in shows, and I won't mention any shows, but Wednesday night, I'll leave it alone. But we're still perpetuating slavery and agendas in the media by people, by our own people who are making our own movies. We're still carrying that stuff, and it's disguised as something else. So it's really important for us to have conversations with our kids about what they're watching. If we can't control what they're watching, then we need to have conversations about what they're seeing. And those conversations need to include things about how do you see yourself when you see people like you, who look like you, who are part of your ethnic group, behave, respond, talk in a certain way. Because the other part of that conversation is this is how the mainstream dominant culture will see you. And this is how they will respond to you. So we really have to educate ourselves and our children about how the world is defining them. What they see on TV is not reality for a lot of people. And I think part of their psyche is being internalized messages from the media. I'm very careful about the magazines I put in my office, because I want to be reflective of the community that I serve. And where does that leave me with? Essence, Ebony, and maybe one time if Lupita's on the front of Glamour or something. That's what I have. The rest of the magazines for people are very non-minority kind of magazines, and the information in them as well. So where are our kids getting fed their information? If they don't get it from home, they're getting it from the media, which is very one-sided.
Thank you for that, Doctor. Cortez, there's lots to chew on there. What are you thinking at the moment?
Oh, no question. Well, let me don my amateuristic psychologist hat here. And, two things that keep rearing their head. And one is our self-concept and our worldview. And as I mentioned before, this conversation has been going on in various different forms in the larger medium since 1988 through Spike Lee's seminal movie, School Days. And there's three things that really came up to my mind on how we deal with this issue. One is that we look at how our children who are look at themselves from their own self-concept and whether or not they choose dark-skinned dolls or white-skinned dolls. And my question is, why hasn't that test ever been done to white children? And, do white children pick overwhelmingly white dolls over black dolls? So, to agree to one of the callers' points earlier, our children are in early developmental stages, and that's certainly not to dissuade Mr. Malik's point of view on how the notion of white supremacy is inculcated in the fabric of everything that we do. But I'm just, a little leery to point to our children as being responsible for knowing or for developing and having a complete, and again I say complete, healthy self-concept as they're in early developmental stages of existence. And, in terms of looking at the psychologists and what psychologists really, the science of psychology, at one point in time labeled blacks who wanted to run away as psychologically traumatized with some sort of, I think it was called dropsomania or something like that. So therefore, you were rigored to having some psychological stigma because how dare you want to run away from being a slave? And so all of this is part of the fabric of our upbringing and how we deal with that. Again, this conversation has been going on in various different stages. It's really time for us to really move forward with this idea on something national, international, in order to, if it's putting the message in our school system, as a population of people, we should not have to continue to rely on various forms of European media to tell our story, to project our viewpoint. And we really need to decide to rail against people within our own culture that put this propaganda out on Wednesday and Thursday nights. We have enough voices. We have enough economic power. It's really totally up to us to start a conversation like this, but move in the affirmative and start doing something actively. And again, we'll have this conversation year after year after year. So, that would be my posit.
Yeah, great points that Cortez made. And the biggest issue, he talked about a national and in fact, an international summit to deal with these issues. I've traveled to Africa 14 different times, 18 different countries. I own a house in Africa. Right now meaning at least over the last generation, there has been an implosion of European beautification on the African continent, stemming from the post-colonial days through missionaries, etc. But these images are making their way deep into the African continent, even where skin bleaching cream is becoming one of the top sellers of beauty products in some parts of the West Coast of Africa. So these are really serious issues.
Yeah, that's a $1 billion industry. Whitening cream is.
Yeah,
how about
that?
On the continent of Africa.
I've seen it firsthand myself, Cortez. So you're absolutely right for calling for that. My thing as we deal with solutions is going to be in the area of Dr. Zach, and that is the subject matter experts. the psychologists, the black psychologists, especially the independent thinking ones like that we have on the panel with Dr. Zach, who are able to deal with this from a cultural, historical perspective and begin to solve the problem. That's where the work is going to be done, and that's where we're going to see the victories and the most advancement.
Absolutely. It really has to start in our community. I know Cortez mentioned earlier about a lot of his issues with self-image and maybe from the standpoint of what he felt about himself happened within our community. And I can relate to that because my mom was very dark-skinned. My father was very, very fair because he had Native American blood. His mother is Native American. And so to some people, depending on what perspective you look, I'm light-skinned. To others, I'm brown. To some, I'm darker. But
you're brown. You're brown.
Look, I have no problem with
Ingram.
who I am.
Ingram, tell her she's brown.
But what I'm saying, honestly, is though I was teased a lot. I had long hair, which some characterize, which I hate the term because having a child with alopecia, I can honestly say it's good if you have hair on your head because some people are not fortunate to have hair on their head who would like hair. But who they characterize me as light-skinned, long hair, and or thinking I'm better. And so in our community, I was teased a lot, and I was shunned, and I was isolated. And then on the flip side, I've seen the other happen. My mother's family, who's very dark-skinned, you know, some of them were always shunned and put aside and maltreated. And even now, when you listen to some people who maybe are more dark complected, how they have this feeling that black men tend to prefer lighter skinned women. And I mean, I agree that it's an issue that has to be expressed in our community. And yes, it may be from a mindset that stems over 400 years ago, but TIMNA has a good point as well. At what point, if with her personal experience and her children they're not exposed to a certain situation, but yet this is still creeping up, how do you really address the issue within our community? Because it's our problem, and we're perpetuating our problem.
Well, I'm going to jump in there and say something there, Tia. I had a friend at school who was, they call as dark as tar. What they used to call him Tar Man. That's how dark he was. And, you know, he got a lot of verbal abuse because he was so dark. But his response was to the people that were giving him and ribbing him, say, you know what? I'm darker than all of you, but that brings me closer to Africa. What have you got to say about that? And it kind of, he looked at it another way. He didn't look at himself being dark and troubled by it. He felt, well, because I'm so dark, I'm closer to Africa. I'm closer to being the original man. That was the approach he took, and that was quite enlightening to me. I was like, wow, that's a different way.
Yeah, but that hits on another thing, though, too, because you do have people who are darker who have this mindset, is blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
Right.
So we are dealing with all of these issues. I don't know. Did someone else want to comment on that?
Well, Brother Malik, I want to hear what you've got to say about it.
Well,
you know,
yeah.
Brother.
Yeah.
You want me to fight them for you, brother?
I think you know, as Cortez was focusing on solutions, and I hear from you too, Atia. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, we were going through as a people a cultural revolution. That cultural revolution, that I argued that before there's a political revolution or economic revolution in the black community, and I struggle, that first must be the basis, and that basis is the cultural revolution. We were talking about, you know, Ungawa, black power. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and we felt good about that, you know, and we accepted the diversity of color inside of that spectrum. We went from the chocolate of chocolate all the way to the light of the light, and there was no issues around that because we began to define black not only as someone's color of their skin, but also their consciousness, right? Their culture and consciousness. We need to return to the area of that cultural revolution, and I will again argue that the black psychologists, people like Dr. Bobby Wright, people like Dr. Iva Carruthers and others, have to play a significant part in how we're going to change generationally as a people.
Can I jump in? I two things. One, Atia, I hear your plea with us. How do we move past this? What do we do now? And how do we start to work in the communities? And I think to get to the community level, we have to deal with it within the family first, because there are families that have still split alliances with their children out of skin color. So I hear stories of how one got favored over the other, and maybe it was because of skin color. And if it wasn't, that was that child's perception. And so they didn't carry that with them, and that became a part of their self-concept. The second thing is, in order to have what I love the idea of the summit, there has to be a safe place first for people to talk about this, because this is for some people, a very painful reminder of some very bad hurts and things that were said to them. And they may not readily open up, even though they know it's a really important topic. They need a safe place to talk about how they've been hurt first, and to process that, and then to be able to go forward and say, hey, let's do some work with the larger community. My last point is, yes, there aren't that many psychologists of color in the world who are talking about this, who are working on this, and certainly we're not on concert together because we don't know where we all are. There are very few even where I am. So if even we got together to have something to begin to work with our community would be a huge start.
Yeah.
TIMNA, how do you feel we can move things forward?
I agree with it. It starts within our home. It starts within the people that are around us, our family members. Even this Thanksgiving, when you are with your family and you see different things that people may say or do, I automatically educate people. I'm an educator. So if I see someone is having self-hatred towards themselves, or they say something that is inappropriate or makes no damn sense, I let people know they're ignorant and they have a problem up front, So I make sure to educate people, even if, my daughter has, 3 different things. So she has dwarfism, has a little person. She's a little person. She's mixed up, and also, she's a child that she looks like Cousin It. Her hair is down to her back, and she's short. So, so if somebody says to her, "Oh my gosh, you have good hair," you know what I say? What does good hair mean to you? I immediately say that.
Yes.
And since she has heard me say that so many times, she now says it. What does good hair mean to you? She says it now. And when she says it, people look so stupid, it's amazing. And then they have to say to themselves, oh, my God, what does good hair mean to me? Mm-hmm. I have done the doll test with my kids. My daughters did not even know Goldilocks was white until they started school, okay? They still think Goldilocks is black, okay, because I have only had black books in regards to storytelling, and HBO does a wonderful job back in the days of having these programs where they kind of like put the storytelling in an African-American perspective. So, and I look at it like this. It starts from the home. So if my daughter can challenge someone if they touch her hair or say, oh, my gosh, you have beautiful hair, or whatever they comment, she is so quick to make a response. So, it starts off with the way you talk around your children and the young people around you.
CORTEZ?
Well, I was, I want to thank everybody. Everyone has given me room for pause and have expanded my own thought concepts about this issue. But I'm down here in Atlanta, and this is really, I would dare say, the legacy of the civil rights movement, got part of its genesis here. And, it started with, a bunch of people who were dissatisfied with the status quo. And, my thoughts are always proactive, like what happens after this wonderful show? And Atia and Ingram, you guys are great and wonderful for having this forum, but this needs to be expounded upon and expanded upon in a very real way. I can't live, just coming upon my 47th birthday, I can't live another 20 years, and 20 years from now having this same kind of discussion. I have done my part with my daughter, who is a beautiful, I dare say, for lack of a better word, light-skinned, fair-skinned, and even when we're using these terms, we have to be careful of how we use these terms, So if a light-skinned person is fair, what is a dark-skinned person? Unfair? So these words have impact and power that we're using, and with all due respect, Kim, I'm sure your daughter is far more beautiful than Cousin It. And I know you were saying that just maybe tongue-in-cheekish a little bit, but, these words have power. They have impact on how we coordinate with each other and the outer world. Again, it starts with one person. So what do we do going forward? We become active. We become proactive. We become cognitive. We do something from this day going forward. We can go to YouTube and listen to Joy DeGree Tyson talk about post-nomadic slave disorder until the cows come home. But when do we, have forums, have meetings, have community teach-ins? That is how it happened in the 40s and the 50s, having community teach-ins and going to the schools and, having community outreach. That's how we make a difference.
Fantastic, Cortez. While you're on that point,
you're listening to More Love.
The hair is no good.
But it's black hair.
I know.
For black people.
But black people don't wear that no more.
So my nappy hair is not worth anything?
No.
They don't want to look like, alpha cut like this.
Okay.
They want to look the style. Right now you're looking all the men can see all the style.
They want to look sexy.
They
want
sexy
this.
looking.
So this is sexy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody walks around with nappy hair no more.
When you hear about good hair and bad hair, give me 3 points as to, after you explain to me what good hair means and bad hair means to you.
Well, I have a very interesting story about that. Well, let me say as a backdrop. Good hair, bad hair, the difference is healthy hair versus unhealthy hair. Plain and simple. As a child, I came down with scarlet fever. And I had very curly hair, and I had dark green eyes as a recessive trait from my paternal side of my family. And after I was stricken with scarlet fever, of which almost took me to the brink of death, she said, I woke up one morning with lighter, my eyes weren't as green, and my hair was what she referred to as nappy. No problem, right? So, and that gives you perspective of, that hair and color has nothing really to do with you. The color of your eyes has nothing to do with anything that you can control. The texture of your hair has nothing to do with what you can control. And, I could remember how people treated me then and afterwards concerning what my hair looked like, what the texture of my hair was. Interesting enough, when I was 12 or 13, my brother decided he would experiment with cutting my hair. And he cut a big plug out of it, and I had to get it all removed. And so as the vanity person in me decided that I would never let anybody concentrate on my bald head. So I would brush my scalp. And I noticed that after brushing my scalp, as my hair was growing back, that the hair came back in a different texture, which I thought was quite interesting. And the manner in which, and I dare say as a young 12, 13-year-old, how young ladies would treat you with, for the lack of a better term, nappy hair versus curly hair that hasn't been chemically treated is quite different. We need to get at the root of why we have the notion of following a Europeanized style of beauty versus one that we have been developed and has been in the world since the early beginnings of Jet and Ebony magazines since the 1960s. We need to have these teach-ins. We need to have community reach out, and we need to go into the schools and make it our own business to start teaching our children a different self-concept and broadening their worldview.
Thank you for that, Cortez.
Okay, we're getting close to wrap-up time, but what we wanted to do is go around the room, and Ingram, I think you can go ahead and take us on out in terms of maybe going around the room
and seeing, for people who are struggling with self-worth and self-esteem issues in our community, perhaps that's stemming from the texture of their hair or the shade of their skin. We want to leave them with something that they can consider.
Oh, okay. So what I personally believe in is, like I said earlier, is truly starting from your home, starting within your family, within your community, even if you're volunteering at school, or the people around you, educating them, and as we speak, as we talk, correcting, addressing, questioning, and just kind of starting to have the conversation. Because if you're having the conversation, guess what? People start to respect, understand, and change the way they talk. Has the man said about, calling my daughter cousin It, my daughter, that made me laugh and think about it. Because what's so funny, that made me think, is that a negative? And I was like, wow, I didn't even look at it as a negative, but it is a negative. So just having that conversation and educating people, immediately people start to think, start to wonder, and then we can start to have action and move forward. Because no one wants to sit there and be ridiculed on the way they look, the way they present themselves. We all want to have a brand that is going to be out there in the public, that is going to shine, whether dark, light, good, bad, whatever the case may be. We all want to be presented in a great light. So thank you so much for having me on today, and I learned something today, and I will definitely not call my daughter cousin It anymore, even though she is an awesome, more than confident little girl. It's amazing because her mother has really, truly empowered her to be that way, and even her little friends to be empowered. So thank you, guys.
Malik,
yes.
What would you say? What would you leave listeners today?
Well, just a couple things in closing. I think that first I want to congratulate you and Atia Ingram for challenging what I call one of the two taboos in the black community that we refuse to deal with, the other being child molestation. So this issue of color issues within the black community and black family, one taboo, and that we Cortez is absolutely right, that we have to tackle beyond just having these conversations about. The other thing I like to add is the larger question in the larger society that unfortunately our kids will continue to bump up against in the educational system and of course in popular culture. Dr. King, well over 50 years ago, said that if you open up Webster's dictionary, there's 500 negative connotations for the word black, 500 positive connotations for the word white. We know that language is the basis of culture. It's wrapped inside of America, and we have to confront that from an independent educational perspective. Kim was right. It starts with each one teach one philosophy. And in terms of the larger cultural revolution that we need to get back to, we saw it in the 1960s and early 70s. We saw it pick back up in the late 1980s and the early 1990s through hip-hop. Unfortunately, it was co-opted into this misogynistic, materialistic gangster rap kind of behavior that we have not recovered from. The last thing I'd like to say in relationship, there has to be a connection between, again and again and again, the subject matter experts, those who are most capable and studied in the area to deal with the issue. It is those independent thinking black psychologists, and good that we have one on the panel with us. So the last thing is we have a new phenomena that exists. I write about it in my book, From the Heart of a Conscious Soul, and that new phenomena is that the black family does not look like the black family that we grew up with in the 1960s and 1970s, in the 1950s and 1960s. It has changed. The foster care system, where our kids are being warehoused throughout this country in the foster care system, that has totally devastated any kind of infrastructure or positive reinforcements that we knew that we could correct, that we cannot correct right now. So that has to be dealt with. So I would again join Cortez and others in calling for a national dialogue on this issue,
Absolutely.
International dialogue on this issue, and let's continue to move that forward. And again, thanks for inviting me out to participate on your panel. I hope that I had something to invite to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for enlightening us.
Yes.
CORTEZ.
Yes, last but not least, right? Again, here at Ingram, this was really amazing. As a person who's a burgeoning statistician, and the randomness of the people who are on this forum, I am really encouraged about our future. There's no way humanly possible that you can take just random people and bring them together and have this kind of dynamic conversation that was really purposeful and enlightening. So to that, I bow to every single one of you here, and particularly to our hosts who had the mindset of bringing this together. The only thing that I will say in part is that, again, we need to continue this on a larger scope. We need to really start talking about marriage in the Black community, of which I am developing a white paper on and wanting to inculcate that in part of the national dialogue as well, because I think, all of these issues are visceral and have, great implications if we don't start to deal with them.
Dr. Clark.
You ready for me?
Oh, we are.
It's my turn? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. So, this has been such a stimulating conversation for me, because I hear so many good things we're all doing, and I think it's reflective of the community where our resources are so fragmented. That if we were to come together and this same kind of conversation happened all over the world, what a change we could make. But we're all kind of doing it in our own way, and we don't know what each other are doing. I would be happy to be a part of any work you guys are doing that would spread the information and the knowledge that will build up our communities, from marriages to families to child abuse, all those kind of things that, again, split and are breaking our families. Look, it's not enough to have a Black first family. Everybody is like, oh, we have a Black president, and they want to identify with that. That's no good if you go home and your family is split by color and racial lines. So, again, I love this conversation. I welcome to be a part of another forum. I love the idea of talking about cultural taboos, because those are the things that, again, are breaking our psyche, and we're not recovering very easily from that. If I have 40 and 50-year-old women sitting on my couch talking about childhood trauma that is still haunting and tormenting them, that is ruining their functioning today, those are conversations, that's unfinished business that we need to address. Absolutely. So I thank you again. Again, I am open to conversation about this. I want to thank you for inviting me, Atia. You've given me some things to think about and some ways to include much of what we're talking about when I'm working with the people that I see.
Fantastic. We would like to thank you all.
But if I can butt in for a moment, if anyone wants to contact me, CORTEZ Charles, anyone has any plan, any idea going forward, I could be reached on LinkedIn.
We're going to do that. We want the people. We want our listeners. And I know the listeners are still listening. And
I know that.
CORTEZ, he's excited to tell how to reach us. I want to say to Dr. Clack, before we go to CORTEZ's point, is that we definitely want you in the pool of experts and professionals that we list on More Love to constantly bring back to our shows, because, like Malik said, it is going to be key that the professionals are involved in helping to change our situation in our community, and that's what More is about. It's about talking about issues that impact our community, particularly where it comes to family, love, marriage, and relationships. Now, for our listeners, anyone who wants to contact any of our guests, as you're listening after the show, you can click on the informational buttons that's out there, and it will have the list of our guests, a link to their websites, as well as how to contact them. We have some wonderful professionals on the line. We have Malik AZIZ, we have TIMNA ANGST, we have CORTEZ Charles, and Dr. Angela Clack. And any of them will be able to help you, and we definitely want to bring you all back at some point in time on other shows. And also, whoever brought up the summit idea is a fantastic thing to do, and maybe that's something we can talk with Black Life Coaches on, who has Black therapists, Black psychologists, Black psychiatrists, and all of those people who are professional that's in our community. It's definitely an excellent idea. Ingram, any last comments that you want to say?
There is something I do want to say, and thank you to all of the guests. Or I don't want to say the word guests. I want to say thank you to all the family today. We all are connected in terms of the vision. We want to see the betterment of our people, and that's why we're all together to talk. But the deeper thing is this, and I think both Malik and CORTEZ talked about it, and others in the room have talked about it as well. This thing about it just not being a conversation, not just being a show, and people just talking about it and talking about their credentials, about what they do, and then going off and doing their thing, that we can always come together and know that when it approaches us, that we're ready to answer that call for help and support. And I'm sure and I'm confident with the people that are in this room today, that if there are listeners listening today, that they would not be rejected or ignored, rather that they can come to a place of comfort and know that the professionals and the people in this room today and the others that we have on other shows will be there to support. I wanted to say that because throughout the world you see many of these conversations being had, and then once they've said what people have said, what they say, they just disappear and you never hear about them again. All the work's not done. And another 20 years go on and the same people are talking and yet nothing's been done. We are steadfast and ensure that whatever we're saying we would do, and I'm sure the people that are in the room as well want to see that happen as well. So thank you all. I'm definitely encouraged, and let's press on.
We would like to thank once again our guests for joining us to talk about more love and how we can increase the love in our community. We would like to thank our sponsors, and we especially want to thank you, the listeners. Until next time, and in the words of Smokey Robinson, more love.
Let it be soon. Don't hesitate. Make it now.
You have been listening to More Love with Ingram and Atia. We invite you to join us Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on morelove.online.